we interrupt your television program to bring you breaking news. We have just confirmed reports that the Japanese Empire has finally succumbed to the forces of the United States and surrendered. Americans throughout the country are celebrating the long-awaited end of World War II. We'll be taking an extended look on how we reached this point in our recent history by reviewing a series of archived broadcasts. The war has ended as a whole thanks to Emperor Hirohito's surrender. This surrender can be attributed to the use of very destructive atom bombs that were dropped over the cities Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now let's take a look at that prior footage.
Destruction rains down from the skies of Japan today thanks to American pilots. Another bomb of unfathomable power has been dropped on the city of Nagasaki just days after thousands of citizens of the city of Hiroshima were completely vaporized by a weapon of similar magnitude.
Can you describe the scope of the damage?
I can still feel the same heat that killed hundreds of thousands of citizens and severely injured many others. Buildings have been leveled. Miles of metropolis have been reduced to cinders, and a poisonous ash cloud is obscuring the sun, painting a ghastly picture. It is still unknown whether or not the Japanese will surrender in the wake of this unprecedented attack, but it is likely, considering that between 129,000 and 246,000 fatalities occurred in the two cities combined. Carl and Carolyn, back to you.
Thank you, Jake. We're getting word that these atomic bombs were dropped following the warnings from the United States Potsdam Declaration, which was issued after the major Allied leaders met with the Potsdam Conference. The United States warned of complete and utter destruction from these skies if the Japanese refused to surrender unconditionally. Truman will undoubtedly meet criticism for this decision.
It never ceases to amaze me how much destruction we are capable of with the technology like A-bombs.
It's incredible, Tyler. We'll have to go through great lengths for a victory. Let's take a look at our broadcast from VE Day.
It's VE Day. Today, citizens of the Allied nations are celebrating victory over the Nazis in Europe. It was today that the Germans finally surrendered, ending the conflict in the European theater, save for some Russian skirmishes that bled into May 9th.
13,000 British prisoners of war were released. As many as 2 million prisoners allied with Germany were taken by the Soviets.
Winston Churchill has designated May 8th as a national holiday in Britain, where thousands were seen waving flags and dancing in the streets. Celebrations were also widespread across the United States. In Louisiana, merrymaking and ringing of the church bells were recorded.
What a joyous event this was for the Allies.
As was this memorable moment for only a few weeks earlier.
Today, Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun, his wife of 2 whole days,
You must have been great at keeping the ladies around.
reportedly committed suicide in their underground bunker with bullets and cyanide pills. The duo allegedly tested the pills on their dog before they took their own lives.
Not his dog.
Its name was Blondie.
The man commits genocide, but then he decides to kill his dog and find an even more foolproof way to get into hell.
I guess so. Anyway, there has been some doubt into whether or not Hitler actually died. There was no witnesses to the death, and they were taking place, and the bodies were supposedly cremated.
Hitler allegedly committed suicide because he feared being captured by the Russians. He pulled the trigger as Allied troops were closing in on Berlin. With the fear gone, the experts predict that it is only a matter of time before the war in Europe theater ends and the Nazis are defeated.
There have been many people whose actions have brought us to where we are today.
We'd like to take some time to recognize our late president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Without him, we still might be fighting in World War II. Here's footage from our broadcast on April 12th.
We are dismayed to announce that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt has passed away after 4 terms in office. The beloved leader has become the longest-serving president in U.S. history, after holding office since 1933.
Roosevelt died around 1 p.m. today at his retreat in Warm Springs, Georgia. Doctors have blamed his passing on a massive cerebral hemorrhage caused by arteriosclerosis or a hardening of the arteries. Just before he fell unconscious, he was leaving his presidential portrait painted by Elizabeth Schumanhoff and sat alongside his mistress, Lucy Mercer.
Ouch. Sorry, Eleanor.
Well, the former First Lady is working hard on preparing the funeral services and appears to have adopted an air of forgiveness.
Good for her.
The president will be remembered for his attempts to change the U.S. government forever with the New Deal policies intended to lift the country out of the Depression. Also, as one of the world's most influential leaders during the duration of this war, he will never be forgotten. He strove to save Americans' lives with the Lend-Lease Act of 1941, which allowed the United States to send ammunition to the Allies without contributing to the troops.
Roosevelt has always looked out for servicemen. He passed the GI Bill on June 22, 1944, which helps veterans by paying for their unemployment and giving them stipends to access higher education. This rewarded veterans of the armed forces with the tools they needed to stay afloat economically and to thrive.
However, he was not unfamiliar with controversy. For example, his attempt to increase the number of Supreme Court justices to 15 with court packing was struck down.
Former Vice President Harry Truman will be sworn in as the next President of the United States. All eyes will be on him as he attempts to resolve the war.
I hope he can be trusted with that power.
What could go wrong?
What heartbreak we felt on that day, here and across the whole United Nation.
Well, Tyler, he will live on in history.
Very true. His contributions will be everlasting. Let's take a look at our coverage over the conclusion of the Yalta Conference on February 11th, on which FDR was an integral part.
The Yalta Conference has concluded today. For approximately a week, the U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Soviet Premier Joseph Stalin have met near Yalta, Crimea, to plan for the post-war world.
Most of the agreements have been hidden from the public, but our news team has acquired some insider information.
Frankie and I go way back.
Anyway, the leaders have agreed to demand a German surrender. Stalin has agreed to allow free elections in Eastern Europe and help fight Japan in order to regain lands lost in the Russo-Japanese War. It is unclear whether or not the Soviet dictator will follow up on these promises.
Some critics are already denouncing FDR as weak, claiming that he was too soft during their negotiations with Stalin.
I think they're being too hard on him. I don't see any bad blood with the Russians coming anytime soon.
I hope so. Anyway, this conference is the latest meeting of the Big Three Allied leaders. In late 1943, the same figures met at the Tehran Conference in Iran. Earlier, these series of meetings addressed many topics, including Eastern European borderlines, the post-war economy, how to defeat and negotiate with Japan, and the many issues with Nazi Germany.
Much of the conference concerned plans for an Operation Overlord, D-Day.
It's weird to see Stalin agreeing one. He seems so civil.
Anyways, Poland's borders were also a topic of negotiation because of the conflict between Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. In addition, the leaders decided to encourage Turkey to join the Allies, agreed to recognize Iranian independence, and resolved to give supplies to the Yugoslav partisans to aid them in their fight against the Nazis.
Important decisions like these are what are precipitated American victory.
Actually, many important battles played a key part as well. The Battle of the Bulge, for example, stopped Hitler from recovering after D-Day. Let's watch.
The tumultuous Battle of the Bulge ended with a lit victory, preventing Hitler from succeeding in his last-ditch counteroffensive to prevent the demise of the Nazis.
The battle, so named because of the Allied front line resembled a convex bulging shape, resulted in the deaths of approximately 100,000 American soldiers, making it the costliest action ever taken by a U.S. Army.
The battle began when Hitler sent a surprise blitzkrieg to the ill-guarded Ardennes region of France, Belgium, and Luxembourg along the Western Front. 3 German armies were sent, totaling around 250,000 Nazi soldiers.
The Allied forces managed to pull off a victory after the Germans ran out of supplies, ammunition, and manpower. Without a victory in this key conflict, it appeared nearly impossible that Hitler would win the war.
Even though Hitler thought he was going to win, he demanded a surrender from the American soldiers. And our great general responded with these words: nuts. This victory was extremely important. Don't you agree?
Yes, this victory eased some of the tension we were feeling about what had concluded just a few weeks earlier.
Over the course of the past 2 years, our team has been investigating Japanese internment camps, locations where thousands of Japanese Americans from the Pacific coast have been unwillingly relocated to the interior of the United States.
Over 200,000 people of Japanese descent were incarcerated in these camps in the wake of the Pearl Harbor attack because the government feared that they were disloyal and likely pose a national threat. President Franklin D. Roosevelt authorized the mass relocation.
This forced movement caused many Japanese Americans to lose their homes, businesses, and dignity. The prisoners were detained without any evidence that they had participated in espionage or any criminal acts whatsoever, sparking outrage from human rights activists.
We now go back to the early summer of 1944, when the end of the World War in Europe was just within reach.
Here's the news broadcast of June 6, 1944, D-Day, featuring on-scene footage.
Today will forever be remembered as D-Day, the beginning of the end of the war. Now we go to Normandy, war correspondent Carolyn Nash on scene.
Thanks, Carl. I'm here on the coast of Normandy, where around 156,000 American, British, and Canadian soldiers have stormed the beaches in a massive anti-Nazi strike. This attack shows extensive and meticulous planning. Based on inside information from Allied sources, the plans for the attack began forming as early as January, when Dwight Eisenhower was made the commander of the strike, codenamed Operation Overlord. Do you have more details, Carolyn? Well, they planned to trick the German army into thinking that Norway and Pas-de-Calais were going to be targeted by the Allies by strategically placing fake equipment, creating a faux England-based army, and staging radio transmission calls. This way, the Germans were caught off guard and massive damage was dealt to Nazi forces. It will be difficult for Hitler to regain momentum in the European theater. Roughly 200,000 German troops were killed or wounded, and the Allies will now face much less opposition as they push to liberate France. Carl and Jake, back to you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Now, we here at the studio give all the soldiers overseas our best.
The D-Day invasion was one of the most astounding shows of military power that the United States has ever demonstrated. Let's look at another one of our notable victories, the Battle of Midway.
6 months ago, we experienced a tragic loss of life at Pearl Harbor that sent us into war with the Japanese. After several days of warfare in the Pacific, we have just won a key victory against them in the naval Battle of Midway. Now we go to Lizzie Campbell, live at the Midway Atoll. Lizzie, what's the latest?
Thank you, Sahara. Yes, as you can see, the wreckage left from the Battle of Midway is behind me. As a proud American citizen, I am happy to say that the Allied forces have successfully defeated the Japanese aggressors in this battle and prevented them from attacking us where we were still hurting, our Pacific territories. Today's victory is thanks to government intelligence that allowed us to decipher the enemy's codes and predict the time and place of the attack. We are lucky to have such brave individuals fighting for us overseas.
Very true. What was the objective of the Japanese fleet?
They wanted to gain complete control of the Pacific in order to become a greater imperial power and extend their influences. It is also evident that they have had their sights on attacking U.S. territories in the Pacific, such as Hawaii and Samoa.
Thank you very much, Lizzie.
Now let's take another look at another event in the Pacific that captured America's attention. The attack on Pearl Harbor.
Let's rewatch our breaking news footage from that day.
Pardon the interruption. We have some grave breaking news to share. The United States Naval Base at Hawaii's Pearl Harbor was just attacked by the Japanese, only 30 minutes after they declared war on us. Our Hawaii correspondent, Carl Mueller, is at the base. What's the latest, Carl?
The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor at 7:48 a.m. with a number of submarines and 353 fighter planes that launched from 6 aircraft carriers. No major parts of Pearl Harbor base were damaged besides the waterfront, where the USS Utah, USS Arizona, USS Oklahoma, and USS West Virginia were sunk. 2,403 Americans were killed, and 1,178 were injured. On the other hand, the Japanese lost 64 soldiers, 24 aircrafts, 5 submarines, and Kazu Sakamaki, a Japanese sailor, was also captured in the attack.
It is evident that the Japanese aim to weaken the United States so that they can expand their Pacific empire. If they wanted to weaken us, however, they have failed. Congress has nearly unanimously declared war on Japan in retaliation. America, welcome to the Great War. Chapter 2.
You know, Josh, watching that footage makes me really sad. It brings back bad memories.
That day conjured up fear and anger. Let's go back to another day like this, the day the war itself began.
Breaking news. Hitler shocked the world with a surprise invasion of Poland, prompting France and Britain to declare war on Nazi Germany. Sahara is on the scene in Warsaw. Sahara, can you tell us about what's going on?
The Poles are in hysterics, Carolyn. They're running around like headless chickens. They did not expect to be met with such a powerful force and are no match for the Nazis. Rumor has it that Germany and the Soviet Union have formed an alliance and intend to divide Poland between them. Things are not looking too good over here. If anyone ordered anything from Poland, I wouldn't expect it arriving anytime soon. It looks as though the country will be stifled by the Nazi regime.
Wow, it's crazy over there. Does it appear that the conflict could escalate?
It appears that we are going to stay out of this conflict for the time being, but only time will tell.
Thanks, Sahara.
And that concludes our broadcast. I hope you took pleasure in our recap of the tumultuous past few years.
America, enjoy a new era of peace. I'm sure there won't be any conflict in the coming decades.
Wait, this just in. Stalin has announced that
Alright, wait. What is this T word here?
Tumultuous?
Tumultuous? Okay, tumultuous or
You can just not
tumultuous?
say it if you want.
You got to like
Tumultuous.
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 Okay, alright, I can do it.
Give this script.
What if I threw the word lit in there?
Okay, so let's start that.
Tumultuous Battle of Bulge was lit with an Allied victory.
Oh, right, okay. Sorry. We beat me.
What heartbreak we felt on that day.
Well,
Here
Tyler.
and across America.
More foolproof way to get when going to hell.
Today, Adolf Hitler and his wife, Eva Braun, of 2 million prisoners allied with Germany were taken by the Soviets. I forgot to say British.